Hey, maybe I'm a narcissist. Maybe I'm autistic. I was watching Dr. Joseph Burgo, and he was maybe doing psychoanalysis on the character in the movie The Social Network, named Mark Zuckerberg, not to be confused with the real Mark Zuckerberg. And his diagnosis was that Mark Zuckerberg in that movie, the character, was a narcissist. Some people complained and said that no, Mark Zuckerberg has Asperger's or is on the autism spectrum. And what occurred to me is that if you like Mark Zuckerberg, you might want to label Mark Zuckerberg as having autism. And if you don't like Mark Zuckerberg, you might be more inclined to label him as having narcissistic personality disorder. I don't like these words disorder, but because they seem like spectrums. Now, I bought Dr. Burgo's book, The Narcissist You Know. That's the book I bought. Let me double check that I'm saying his name correct. Yeah, so his name is Dr. Joseph Burgo, and he has a YouTube channel. But according to the DSM, a person must demonstrate at least 5 of the following features to receive diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder. And so I'm going through these things. Number 1, a grandiose sense of self-importance. Grandiose. And in other words, the individual exaggerates achievements and talents and expects to be recognized as superior without commensurate achievements. So as I go through these, I can think back to 2nd grade. And what I notice is that if I had received a diagnosis when I was young, I would have, or at different stages in my life, you could have hit the checkbox. But if you look at my life now, I think I've matured, which makes me think that perhaps all humans are born with, let's call it sin, and we can mature in such a way that we learn to deal with our sin properly. And so the way I've learned to deal with my delusions of grandeur is that I've attempted to be objective and attempted to remove the delusions. And I think this is going to be one of the recurring patterns in each of these. So I no longer, when I have delusions of grandeur and aim at being someone, truly being someone that I'm not, then I'll fall short, especially if I overreach, which I have. Like, one of the biggest narcissists in the world, especially younger versions of myself, and so I would overreach, be unable to accomplish that overreaching goal, and then reality basically slaps me in the face and makes me more cautious about overreaching. And so what I would prefer is to know objectively what my strengths and weaknesses are, such that, like, ideally there would be some objective analysis of all humans, and there would be a place for me in that overview in that analysis. That's where I hope artificial intelligence will help solve a problem that, here I am being a narcissist, I have a name for a problem that I think is the most important problem, right? So that's number 1, a grandiose sense of self-importance. I definitely have that, and I try to be rational. I try not to have delusions, and I just maintain an awareness of my predisposition to have delusions about my own self-importance, and I try to remember that. And so actually I try to be humble. And I think that points at the fruit of the Holy Spirit in the Bible in Galatians. If I practice being, and I would say literally practice, if you're a narcissist, you have to practice these, being loving, being peaceful, being joyful, being patient, being gentle, being kind, having self-control, being good, being faithful. If you practice these, that looks something like humility. And so I practice these. And so that's going to be the recurring thing. That's the foundation which allows me to try and be rational, so that I don't have delusions of grandeur. And I will be whatever is needed by the higher power, the Creator. That's how I've managed to deal with my narcissism. But I still struggle. So, number 2. So number 1 was basically delusions of grandeur. Number 2 is a preoccupation with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. And I've done this. I've spent years doing this, doing it with fantasies about how I could be important and admired, and with the delusions of grandeur. And then I really resonate, the science fiction resonates with me when there's like a hero that is able to do that as well. It's very attractive to me. I've spent a lot of time and energy enjoying these fantasies. That's number 3, a belief that he or she is special and unique and can only be understood by or should associate with other special or high status people or institutions. And this definitely was a phase in my life. And I have the pull toward that. The way I deal with this is I try to remember that I have strengths and weaknesses. Like, because I overreached and failed to accomplish goals when I overreached due to, like, you could call it irrationality, I remember my own weakness, and I have other ones too that we'll probably get to. I remember those. And so then I know that I have strengths and I have weaknesses. And so, for example, one of my weaknesses is caring for other people's feelings. And I married someone who has a lot of empathy. And so we complement each other. And sometimes I think my wife will care too much for people's feelings. And then I sometimes, maybe often, don't care enough about other people's feelings. And so we can complement each other. So I have an icon in my mind of the Star of David, and I see a triangle which represents like a hierarchy within a skill set, and then an inverted triangle, which is the weaknesses. So it's like a human has overlapping strengths and weaknesses. And another way to say it is, for every strength is a weakness, and for every weakness is a strength. And so I have to remember that. And so I would suggest that the narcissist remembers that humans are limited. Like, every human is limited. And we narcissists should really embrace that truth. And don't say those humans are limited. You have to say we humans are limited. A need for excessive admiration. And the word need bothers me. But there's an extreme desire, a desire for admiration. But what does this word need, and what is this word excessive? And it's the excessive, I would say, is related to the irrationality and the delusions. And so at some point, I wanted to be admired objectively. I wanted to be admired objectively. And then eventually I've gotten to the point where I don't want to be admired at all. Now, it's something I aspire towards. Like, there's something deep in me that wants to be admired, but I aspire toward being part of a group which has its own identity, which I contribute toward. I contribute within, and maybe I can be admired within the group, but then the group is headless, and then this guy is not the head of the group, right? That would be the ideal situation for the narcissist, so that you can try to be of service and try to help the group while embodying the fruit of the Holy Spirit. So admiration is okay, but we don't want it to be delusional. And we want to respect people's opinions who disagree with us. And so what I practice is asking for criticism and feedback and being sincere and trying to at least understand the other person's perspective. And it's hard and it takes practice. And it hurts. And so you also have to become someone who faces the pain, faces the discomfort. All right, so a sense of entitlement. Unreasonable expectations of especially favorable treatment or automatic compliance with his or her expectations. And that's, like I said, throughout life, like, this has been getting better over time. But yeah, this is how I was made from the youngest age. Then the words especially favorable treatment or automatic compliance. So the especially favorable treatment, the mind of this narcissist is such that I can easily remember the times that people did me wrong. And it's harder to remember the times when people helped me. Well, I can remember those too, but it's not as easy as remembering the times that people did me wrong. And then there's times where it seemed like I was being mistreated, and maybe I wasn't. I could have perceived mistreatment even though I wasn't mistreated. And those are hard to see for a narcissist. And then the automatic compliance with his or her expectations. What I've done is I've practiced some kind of having less expectations. Because it's just those expectations which I become attached to, when they aren't accomplished, so there's some kind of defensive pessimism used as a tool that I've used as a tool. And so I try not to have expectations. And there's a little bit of Buddhism in this. The removal of attachments and the practicing of not being attached to a plan and a course of action. And this has taken a lot of practice. I've worked from home and I've had my children come interrupt me while I'm doing the thing that I thought was most important, and then I could feel that a sense of anger being interrupted, and then through meditation and mindfulness and practices, I can breathe and I can manage that situation, and I can get better at managing those situations such that when I was younger and got interrupted, I might get angry and express anger. And as I become more mature, I can handle that anger delicately. And then I can allow it to pass. I can bring in the Holy Spirit, with the fruit of the Holy Spirit, and possess it, and then handle the situation well. Interpersonally exploitative behavior, someone who takes advantage of others to achieve his or her own ends. Now, I haven't, it's not like I intentionally try to do that, but in hindsight, upon reflection, I end up seeing is like, oh yeah, I did not care about that person's feelings. I did not care about that person's goals when I behaved in ways that I wanted to behave. And when I received the feedback from people, which is just so helpful, if you can open yourself up as a narcissist to the pain of being criticized and receiving feedback that is critical of your behavior, it's so helpful. I think it requires love. And that's not, this thing love is, I think, ignored. Like maybe the best medicine is love. Like the person with the disease, whatever it is, whether it's narcissism or alcoholism, learning to love is the cure. And so interpersonally exploitative behavior, I would just say the narcissist, or this narcissist, didn't try to be exploitative, but did it accidentally, just because that's the way the brain is wired here. And it required the feedback so that the other person shared their feelings, like maybe nonviolent communication. They can say, I observed that you did this, it made me feel this, and I would request that you change your behavior. And then as a narcissist, it's very hard to change. But with practice, it becomes easier. So that's something that it's just, we just have to be aware of our weaknesses. We have to remember from our mistakes, and if you're wise, you'll learn from other people's mistakes. And so I'm pointing at lessons I've learned from my own mistakes. Because I'm a narcissist, I didn't believe I could learn from other people's mistakes. I had to go learn from my own. So I try to learn people's goals, explicit goals. I try to listen to people's feedback about how they feel and care about it. And I really have to try. And I try to be objective, and I try to remember my weaknesses, because all people have weaknesses. Okay. A lack of empathy, a person who is unwilling to recognize or identify with the feelings and needs of others. And this is what's is very natural. Like this is where the autism spectrum and the narcissistic spectrum appear very similar from the outside. Like, take away the categories, there is this acting as if the person does not understand the other person. And the way I see it is there's like distributions of traits, and then there's like normal distributions. And so you are able to have empathy for the people who have traits that are similar, most similar. And for people who have traits that are farthest away from you, it becomes harder to have empathy. And so, for example, my wife has a lot of just care for people's feelings. And I was born not caring for people's feelings, or maybe I was, whether it's nurture or nature, I think is debatable, because there were some beliefs implanted in me that shaped me. I know for certain, like the one, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words shall never hurt me. That belief was implanted in me, and I think it shaped my development from a young age. My mom died when I was 2. I mean, I think these, I have a father with a certain personality as well, and so these things shaped me from the youngest age. And so there's a nature-nurture argument. And so my wife, and being a loving husband with my wife, where we complement each other with our strength and weakness regarding empathy and caring about people's feelings, has been helpful for both of us, I think. I know it's been helpful for me, and I think it's been helpful for my wife as well. But I am a narcissist and prone to delusions. Um, envy of others, or a belief that others are envious of him or her. Now, I tend to lean more toward envy of others and less toward believing others are envious of me. But yeah, I'll feel that envy pop up. Someone receives that attention, or that admiration, or gets credit for the idea, or gets the, whatever. Whatever, I as the narcissist think that I deserve that thing. And so it requires an intentional service mentality. Something like, I've structured a belief system. I think beliefs are super powerful. And so I've structured a belief system, and I've tried to act as if and believe that the best way for me to have the most impact in the world is that I don't care for admiration. Even though it's in me that I seek admiration, I believe that by humbling myself, by embodying the Holy Spirit, manifesting the fruit of the Holy Spirit, believing in God and working and trying to do God's will, such that on Judgment Day God will be proud, then, and I could say, instead of God, I could say higher power, but eventually I think that leads to God. What I've learned is that not worrying about credit. This is just a pattern throughout reality as well. When you care about credit, you have to invest a lot more time and energy into caring about credit, which is different from the fruit which is produced. And so I've practiced calling companies and emailing companies and giving away ideas, and noticing when people take my ideas, and trying to notice when other people had the idea before I did, because as a narcissist, sometimes and I think all humans might do this, we'll tend to think it was our idea, even though maybe we heard it subconsciously. So I try not to worry about receiving credit for the ideas. And then the last one on this list, a demonstration of arrogant and haughty behaviors or attitudes. And you probably can see it in this video. A demonstration of arrogant and haughty behaviors or attitudes. So it's confidence. If you can take these labels and you can change them and say confident. So this narcissistic personality disorder, I think the key word there is disorder. And what that means is you are unable to have a successful marriage and be a successful parent and work with a team of people being productive in the economy because of your disorder. Whatever that disorder is, whether it's because you care about feelings too much, or whether it's because you don't care about feelings enough, it can become a disorder. There's all kinds of ways in which we become less able to function. And so you can try to tune your belief system and practice and identify practices. Like at the dinner table, I can ask my wife and children to provide feedback about how I could have been better. How could I have been a better husband? And I can do that with my wife in private. But how can I be a better husband, and how can I be a better father? And be sincere and learn to deal with the defensiveness that arises. So I'm going to read this book, and I'm going to talk about narcissism. And it would be nice if you tried to understand the narcissist. And so I feel qualified. Like the same way an alcoholic, I've been reading the Alcoholics Anonymous book. The way an alcoholic can go to a rehabilitation clinic, or the place where an alcoholic ends up after they've basically lost control and blacked out and ended up in a hospital or been assigned to a place because they went to prison. You know, recovering alcoholics go fishing at places where they can say, hey, I've been where you've been. And so that's how I feel a little bit about narcissism. I feel a strange attraction to narcissists. I feel a kind of a kinship, a bond, a love. And so, yeah, it'd be strange. I take this video and I share it with people who I see to have an issue, a disorder regarding narcissism. And that hurts. Like a narcissist who receives this video, all of a sudden it's like, maybe the reason you don't have a spouse, and the reason you aren't a good parent, and the reason you aren't a good employee is because you've got some work to do. It's quite obvious. Like if you look at it, try to be rational about it. It might not be the other people who have problems, right? This is another practice. I've always tried to say, when I expect and ask others to change and point the finger at others, I try to ask myself, what can I do? What can I do better? I can always do something. I can always try something. I can try to learn. I'm smart. I'm a smart narcissist after all. Shouldn't I be able to learn a new trick, a new skill? I'm so amazing. So try not to, that's the one thing about this book. I guess I'll end with it. If I go back to the introduction, here it is. We, narcissists, constantly strive to come across as winners because we fear that we are actually losers instead. And I think there's some truth to that. And if we really want to be winners, it would be nice if we were actually perceived as winners, objectively, strengths and weaknesses and all, the whole package. And so, let me know what you think. Have a good day.